Well, welcome everybody. Oh, my computer's telling me that you're recording. Got it. Anyway, welcome everybody. I'm always excited to come back and teach another one of our online virtual cooking classes. So, whether you're cooking along or maybe you're already in cozy clothes and have a glass of wine next to you and just want to learn a few tips, we welcome all of you. We do ask that you all mute your volume, that you just keep yourself on mute unless you have a question. We have a large group of people, so I ask that if you have a question, you're always welcome to unmute yourself and ask the question anytime during this class. I don't mind at all, even if it's to tell me to slow down. I don't mind that at all either. You can certainly put something in the chat. Jesse sometimes helps me read the chat because it's far away and I don't have my reading glasses on. But anytime you have a question, feel free to ask. Again, my name is Chef Wansleben and I am the chef and owner here of Mise Culinary Center. We are down in Shockoe Slip, just right near about a block past the Tobacco Company restaurant. And this year we're finishing up our 17th year of offering programs, cooking classes, whether they're in person. We're now welcoming people back for in-person or virtual. We will continue with our virtual classes, which we really enjoy as well. And the great thing about the virtual classes is that we've been able to teach to people all over the world. So we have a whole new audience with you folks included. So we will continue to offer virtual classes as well as in-person classes. So whatever you feel comfortable, we hope that you can join us again sometime soon. And crazy enough, we're already talking about spring things. So so let's get started on this kind of not very November-like evening, but I heard the lunar eclipse is going to be the longest lunar eclipse in like 400 years. So starting at 1 o'clock, 1:30, I think about 2:20, they said that you could see a bite out of the moon, and then the whole thing is supposed to wrap up around 4:15. So a.m. So if you want to set your alarms, I think the next one is in 2600 something. So that's a little food for thought. First thing, so tonight we're going to make our meatballs with cranberry sauce. Now this is using ground beef, but you can absolutely use ground turkey if you wanted to make a little something different than your standard roast turkey and cranberry sauce for yourself. Maybe it's just a couple of people and you want to make it a little different, but this is a really great recipe. And I found this recipe because someone from one of my other classes asked me, what else can I do with cranberries other than a dessert and other than just your standard cranberry relish on the back of the bag? So I found this nice savory cranberry sauce that will go really nicely with meat. And like I was telling Jesse, I said, this is a step up from your meatballs and grape jelly recipe. So it takes a little bit of time, but this, cranberry sauce, you can certainly make ahead and keep for a later time. It's just a really nice savory sauce. Then we'll make, this is one of my favorite cheese balls. I don't know where I found this recipe from or how. I definitely have tweaked it over the years, but it has sweet and savory. It has crunchy and smooth. It's like everything all lined up. And tonight we're going to make a cheese log. So it'll almost look like some of those herb covered goat cheese logs that you see. But it's hard to stop eating it. So it doesn't last long in my house. And you can absolutely change up the nuts. My daughter can only have almonds and she can't have any other nuts. So I just did the same procedure with the almonds that you do with the walnuts in the recipe. And then for our dessert, we'll make a really simple holiday bark. And this one is using white chocolate. So if you have a microwave handy.
I'd be best if you go in the bedroom so I don't get distracted.
Did someone have a question? No. So our last thing will be the holiday bark, and that is with either some pumpkin seeds or pistachios. This is just really simple. You melt the chocolate, you add it, you sprinkle it with the mixings, you drizzle some extra chocolate on top, and then you put it in the refrigerator until it hardens. So that's a real simple, and it's a nice little end of dinner treat. Or again, it's something really nice to have with a cup of hot chocolate. So before we get started, we'll start off with our meatballs. I'll go over the ingredients, and we want to have our mise en place. Our mise en place, it's a French term that means all things in its place, or all things at your hand. So I have my liquid ingredients and my chopped garlic and fennel, and I have all those things kind of measured out and ready to go, so that we don't have to scramble and leave things on the stove or in the oven while we're going to do something else, and then we lose track of time and things burn, and we don't want that to happen at all. So if you're cooking along, you want to make sure that your oven is preheated on 400 degrees. This is to cook the meatballs. So you can certainly do this in a pan, but we're going to go ahead and just roast them in the oven while we make our cranberry sauce. So that works out really, really well. So I'm putting on gloves because sometimes when you're making meatballs or a meatloaf, your best tools are your hands, because you can really get in there. Now, once we make our meatballs, I'm using a small little cookie scoop that I'm going to just scoop to make the meatballs. You can certainly just use your hands and roll them in whatever size you want. So in the bowl now, I have a pound of ground beef. Jesse and I were talking about, really knowing where your food comes. This is some of my beef that I get from a beef share twice a year. It's delicious. I will even sometimes, snack on a little piece of it without any seasoning, because it is so clean and just, it's so delicious. So certainly get the best product that you can, whether it's ground turkey, ground chicken. So here I have the ground beef, and we'll want everything in one bowl. So I have the ground beef, I have my French onion soup or dip mix, the dry packet, the Lipton French onion soup mix. I've got that in there. I have some breadcrumbs, I have some parsley, I have some milk and 1 egg, and I'm going to put that all in there. And now I'm going to mix it up with my hands, because I feel like you can certainly use a wooden spoon or a spoon in there, but I don't know. I just think sometimes your hands, you can really get that in there. And your best tools are your hands, as long as they're clean. And boy, have we been cleaning and sanitizing our hands lately. So then you have this nice, fragrant mixture. And I'm not adding any salt or pepper, because the sauce, the cranberry sauce, will have plenty of flavorings. But this also just makes a really great meatball. Okay, so I've mixed all those things together. Wow, I can really smell that French onion soup mix. And the nice thing about that French onion soup mix is that it has a lot of seasonings already in there, and the onions are dehydrated. So once they're mixed in with the liquid ingredients, they start to bloom a little bit. That way they won't be too chewy. So I'm just doing a nice loose scoop and putting them on my tray. And I have my tray lined with some parchment paper. Now, if you have a Silpat, which is a silicone mat, you can certainly use that. If you have aluminum foil, you could definitely use a piece of aluminum foil and then maybe spray it with a little non-stick spray, and that'll work fine too. The nice thing about the aluminum foil and the parchment paper is that once the meatballs are cooked, you can throw it away, and there's not too much cleaning of the pan. And we have just enough liquid and just enough breadcrumbs in here to keep your meatball together. Now, sometimes when I'm making turkey meatballs, I don't add any breadcrumbs in there. I find that a lot of time with the ground turkey, or the ground chicken, there's usually enough fat in there that I don't have to worry too much. Now these meatballs, after you cook them, you can certainly freeze them. You can even freeze them raw, but if you're going to make these and freeze them raw, you'll want to put your sheet tray in the freezer first, if you can fit your sheet tray in your freezer, so that they freeze individually. Then you can pop them off and put them right into a zip top freezer bag. If you put them in a freezer bag right away, most likely they're gonna stick to each other. And then you'll be trying to break them apart and they'll be solid, they'll be frozen solid, so it'll just be a mess. So freeze them separate first. Does the baking keep them from getting dry? Is that what the question was? Jesse, do you know what the question is in the chat?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. I find, she says, John asked, does the baking the meatballs keep them from getting too hard? I find that if I fry them, they are like little rocks. So for pasta sauce.
Oh yeah, sometimes because frying, you can never tell if they're cooked in the middle, and then you end up getting it really crusty on the outside, which is fine if you're gonna like maybe have a meatball sub or something. But by roasting them on a timer, you get a nice even roast all around, and then we finish them off in the savory sauce. So even if they're a little bit under, they'll finish in the sauce. I just find it gives them a nice even cooking rather than trying to like in a pan with oil, rather than having them get really, really crunchy on the outside. And I've done that myself, especially in a rush. But it just ends up getting very smoky for me. So I just find roasting them, it takes like 20 minutes. It's pretty easy. And I just find it a little bit easier. So let me know how you like this recipe, and then you may find that, again, it's just easier to throw them in the pan, no mess. You don't have any sputtering all over the place. But I find it a little bit easier. All right, so I'm putting them in the oven. I have them all scooped out. Set my timer. Go. And now I'm going to get ready for the cranberry sauce. While those are in there, it's almost about the same amount of time. Now don't mind my pan. This is definitely a very well-loved and used pan. But again, we want to go back to our mise en place. So for our cranberry sauce, we need some olive oil, some shallots, garlic mince, some fennel seeds crushed. Fennel seeds are like an anise flavor. You know, fennel are bulbs with big fronds on the outside. So this will give it a little bit, again, more of that savory kind of licoricey scent. Some, of course, your cranberries, some brown sugar, some maple syrup, some mustard, a nice sprig of thyme. But what we're going to do right now is cut up our shallots. Now, shallots usually are a little bit smaller than this. This happens to be quite a large shallot. So if you shop, say, at Kroger, you'll find that the shallots are a little bit large. So just keep that in mind when you're making your dish. So this will definitely yield me about 1/4 of a cup. Now, a lot of times shallots, which are part of the onion family, have this kind of 2-in-1. So if you can see this, I have like a baby shallot and a regular size shallot. I just separate those because you don't want any of the peel on there. So this I'm just gonna peel. So I have all my other ingredients, a little bit of rice vinegar. Now, if you don't have rice vinegar, which is often used in Asian ingredients, you can certainly use an apple cider vinegar. I would probably use an apple cider. And if you have neither of those, but you do have like a white vinegar, you can use that too. But I would definitely, if you don't have the rice wine, I would probably go with an apple cider first. Now these already have pretty much a flat side. And I only need, when the recipe says minced, it just means finely chopped. Now, if you have a chopper, you can certainly use that, but I like to just, I find sometimes, you know, if I have a knife, that's the only tool I want to have. So I am going to finely chop up these. So with an onion, if we had a regular onion, I would tell you to cut off the stem, actually like what I did with this one, I cut off the stem here. And then I would tell you to cut through the root to give you 2 flat sides. Well, this with the shallot, I already have 2 flat sides. So I'm going to curl my hand like I always do. And I'm gonna make some 1/4 inch slices right down, but I'm not gonna go through the root. So I don't have anything falling out here. And now I'm just gonna tuck in that thumb and make some nice thin slices. And to find shallots, you can find them, they're right where the onions and the, well, they're definitely where the garlic is. And you should see plenty of shallots out now because shallots are in a lot of the holiday dishes. Green beans with fried shallots, those are really good too. So this one is a little thick. So I am going to make a cut, but again, I'm not going to go all the way through, just like the onions. So I'm going to make a cut halfway through, and then I'm going to make those same slits again. Just go straight down. Now, like I said, if chopping is not your thing and you have a little chopper, go ahead and use that. And then just make nice cuts. And then any pieces that I couldn't really, that I wasn't comfortable with cutting because I was getting really close to the root, I just kind of chop around it. And there are my shallots. Let me go grab my olive oil. I'm going to turn this on to a medium heat. I have a gas cooktop, so for me, that's about a 5. It's always lovely to have a new bottle that hasn't been opened. There we go. So just a couple of tablespoons of oil. Now, one tip about the oil that I always remind people, you know, when you pour in oil, it's thick. It has some viscosity to it. So I like to start my sauteing when that oil gets nice and warm and fluid. So I can move it around in the bottom of my pan and it moves around like water. Come the new year, I should have new video equipment so that not only will you be able to see me and the cutting board, but you'll be able to see in what I'm cooking on the cooktop as well. So new things coming in 2022. All right, so that's nice and again, really fluid as if I put water. First thing we're gonna do is just saute those shallots. And that's what you want to hear, a nice light sizzle. You don't want to burn these, and we don't necessarily need any color. We just want them to get a little translucent and nice and soft. Get a saute spoon. So while those are sauteing, I have my chopped garlic and my crushed fennel seed. I happen to have a mortar and pestle, so I just ground up the fennel seeds in that. If you have, do you prefer wooden spoon? For this dish, the type of spoon doesn't really Well, you know, for this dish, I probably will not use a wooden spoon because you're using cranberries and they'll eventually pop and open up. Your wooden spoon will stain. So.
Yeah, she's also asking about cutting boards, Chef Christine. Do you have a?
Oh, about cutting boards. Sorry, I didn't see the rest of the question. At home, I have wood. Down here at work, I sometimes use a wood down here. You have to make sure that if you have wood that you do oil it properly, clean it and oil it properly. But wood actually retains less bacteria than the plastic ones do. The plastic ones, we run through the dishwasher and, you know, we sanitize these. So for the masses, these are good, but I like my cutting boards at home. I do have, my main cutting board it actually butts right up to the countertop. It is wooden, and I do keep it nice and oiled and sealed. But when I'm cutting something raw, a raw meat, a raw fish, I have some of those flexible cutting mats that I use because those, again, I can easily clean and I can put those in the dishwasher. So really it's your preference. I just like to cook on the wooden ones, but for our classes down here and just for the purpose of sanitation for everybody here, we just use plastic ones. So really it's up to you. Okay, oh my goodness, I can smell that already. All right, now I'm going to add my fennel and my garlic. Then you'll really be able to smell that fennel, that anisey scent. It almost reminds me of a sausage, that fennel. Or licorice. Fennel is very, very good for digestion. If any of you have ever been to an Indian restaurant, usually at the cash register or on the entrance, they have a little bowl of candied fennel seeds that you're supposed to eat after your meal because they aid with digestion. Oh, that smells good. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead. So I sauteed the shallots for a couple of minutes. Then I added the chopped garlic and the crushed fennel seeds. Now we're going to go ahead and add in our cranberries. So I did go to Costco and get one of those giant bags of cranberries. So I've already used some of them. I have 2-pound bags. Now I like to cook with cranberries all year round. So I usually buy 2 and I'll, keep them frozen. So I'm adding my cranberries. Now I'm also going to add in this bowl here, I have the brown sugar, I have the maple syrup, I have my Dijon mustard, my water, and my vinegar. So I'm just going to scoop all that in there. And of course, my thyme sprig. This is a fresh thyme sprig. And that we're putting in there really just for flavor. And those we'll just let sit until the cranberries start to pop. A little bit of water. So I'm just going to let that sit there. Again, it's still at medium heat. And I'll just let it sit. My meatballs have about 8 minutes left. So perfect timing. We'll let that simmer for about, once they start to pop, we'll lower it and let it simmer for about 10 minutes. And then we'll add in the meatballs. We'll take out that thyme sprig and just let them get really nice and cooked.
Chef Christine, I'm wondering what type of pot is that? That's not a stock pot. That's not a Dutch oven. How would you describe that pot if I were looking for something like that?
This is, well, you know, a lot of this equipment we get at at a restaurant supply store. So I have, you know, I have this one. You know, we have our family of sizes. These are called saucepans. I mean, they're really when you want to make a lot of sauce. And you know, anybody can get a membership. They're free at Restaurant Depot. So the Chesterfield Library can have any business. You don't have to be a food related business, but any business at all can get a membership to Restaurant Depot. But there are other restaurant supply places I mean, there are places you can order them, like Restaurant Equippers, and you can just go on in there and find all the different sizes. But yeah, these are just, especially for restaurants, you make sauces, you make this much of a sauce. But at home, if you don't have a saucepan this big, you could actually use something, I would say you can probably even use something like just a deeper saute pan, something with high sides, so that you can still make the sauce and it won't bubble over. This just works well because you will be adding the meatballs back into the sauce. So either pan works fine, but yeah, these big ones, usually at restaurant supply places. I'm trying to think where else. That's probably one of the main, yeah, I mean, you can tell it's been used quite a bit. But you may be able to find them at other kitchen supply stores, like bigger ones. Like I'm sure a place like Bed Bath and Beyond will have some of the larger ones. So I'm just gonna let that sit. Now it's time for the cheese ball. I know a lot of times you think cheese ball, you think the ones that you buy in the grocery store that have like the cheddar. It's almost like reddish in color. It's got the cheddar and the paprika and whatever else is around it. But it's really so easy to make. And for this one, I love to use my hand mixer. What was the question? I'm sorry, I didn't see it in time.
The question is, when you are prepping, is it always okay to put all the wet ingredients together when you mise en place?
Only if the recipe says that all those ingredients will be added together. You certainly don't want to put all the wet ingredients together and then they, like for the sauce, if it said, you know, keep out the maple syrup in the procedure. So that's another thing with mise en place. Not only do you want to read through the recipe, but you want to read through the procedure so that you don't, and hey, I've made that mistake plenty of times, actually, especially with dry spices. But even for this recipe, for the sauce recipe, you know, we sauteed the shallots first, then we added the garlic and fennel. And I almost started putting everything in one little dish. And then I said, no, because sometimes you have to think of the cooking times, especially with non-liquid ingredients. But you can put all the liquid ingredients together if it calls for it, like the milk and the egg. I knew those were all going into the meatball mixture. So I just measured out my milk and then plopped my egg in there. But yeah, read through it first, because there's nothing worse than combining them all and realizing you weren't supposed to. Because there's usually a reason for that. It could be cooking times, it could be how it's seasoned, how it melts, any of those things. So I always have to remind myself to read the whole thing before I start. Now this is the cheese ball. So the ingredients are pretty straightforward. And I'm going to use my hand mixer. Honestly, I just don't feel like getting out my stand mixer with a paddle. You'll get the same results, although you may have to kind of scrape down the blender a little bit more. But either use a stand mixer or a hand mixer for this. Everything I've already taken out and it's at room temperature. I can see that my cranberries are already starting to burst a little bit, are at room temperature. So this, we put everything in except our parsley and our bacon, because we are going to be rolling our cheese ball or cheese log, however you want to shape it, into our bacon and parsley. Now, I use bacon bits in mine. If you want to, cook or you have extra bacon, certainly use that. But it's one less thing I have to put in the oven. So right now I have my cream cheese. This is, how much cream cheese do I have here? I have 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons. So it's a little bit more than a 1/4 cup. But we'll start at the top. So I have my chopped scallions, green and white part, about 2 tablespoons of that I have in the bowl. I have my Maytag blue cheese, 1/4 cup. I bought my blue cheese in crumbles so that it was easy to measure out. Put that in there. Now I have my cream cheese I already put in there. I have my 1/4 cup of crumbled goat cheese. Same thing, a little bit easier. All right, let me go check on those meatballs. Oh, they look delicious. Already nice and brown. Let me hold that up. Nice and brown, not too much fat. Oh, they smell so good. All right, so now I'm just gonna keep those out until my sauce is ready. All right, so we have our cream cheese, our goat cheese, and our blue cheese, and our scallions. I have a 1/3 cup butter, which I did slightly melt a little bit. You want it to be very, very soft so that we can blend it. All right, put that in there. Now I have my chopped dates, which is the sweet. So I have my chopped dates. And you can certainly buy chopped dates. These I just happened to, everyone in my family, we love dates. So I just had a few and I chopped those up. Don't forget to give, if you're cooking along with me, don't forget to give that cranberry sauce a stir. Because I can hear those cranberries popping. All right, so I have my dates in there. And then I have chopped almonds. As I said, we can only have, almonds is the only nut we can have in our house. So I have some chopped and seasoned almonds. So these we already toasted with some butter. Can you?
Raisins instead of dates. Can we use raisins instead of dates?
Sure, absolutely. You wouldn't have to chop them up or anything, but yes, you can definitely use some raisins. You may want to plump them up in a little bit of warm water, but you can certainly use raisins if dates aren't your thing. You can even use apricots in here too. All right, so I have those nuts. And again, I have my parsley, which I'll chop up in a little bit, but I have my parsley and my bacon on the side because I don't need those right now. So I'm going to take my hand mixer and I'm just going to mix this until it all comes together. And that's it. That was what, like 10 seconds. So now, blend that up just a little bit. I still see some of that butter. So now it's this kind of loose, unformed mix. I'm going to put this in the refrigerator for about 15 minutes. Then what I'm going to do, and I'll show you, I'm going to form it into a log, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Of course, a log, that's just not a very great culinary term, but that's how we're going to shape our cheese mixture. Now you can certainly form it into a ball if you want, or you can make tiny little ones. So if you wanted to do, like if you wanted to give everybody kind of an appetizer plate with some cheese and some nuts and some dried fruit, you could scoop these. Once it's chilled, you can scoop these into using a cookie scoop into little round individual balls. Then once it's chilled, we'll form it and then we'll roll it into the well, actually, you know what? We're going to form it now. We're going to form it and chill it, and then we'll roll it into a plate that has our bacon and our chopped parsley, and that's the top coating. All right, so here we go. Why try and form it when it's cold? That doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to take a nice long sheet of plastic wrap. I'm going to lay it on my cutting board lengthwise, so it's longest across the countertop. Now I'm just going to scoop. Here, I'll do it on top of my cutting board so that you can see. There we go. And I'll scoop this as much into the center of this piece of plastic as I can. Scoop this in here. This will take you a total of 15 minutes. So if you ever have unexpected guests arrive and you have these ingredients or parts of these ingredients, it just makes a really lovely dish. All right, so what I'm doing now is I am taking the piece that is closest to me, and I'm just going to roll this. It's all right if it's not all together. I'm gonna roll it. And then I'm gonna take either side. So I don't know if any of you have ever made homemade sausages, but without a casing, that's kind of the same. So we're gonna take either side and twist them. I'm trying to describe, twist it in opposite direction. So I have one twist going one way, one twist going the other way, until it all comes together in sort of a tube, which is another not great culinary term, but that's how we want it to be shaped. So I kind of press it into the sides, and now I'll give it a roll or two, and I get this nice kind of oblong shape, so that when we present it on a board or for our own snacking enjoyment, it's nicely formed and shaped. And then once it's chilled a little bit, we'll roll it in that parsley and bacon mixture. So I'm gonna go put this aside, and I'm gonna get a plate and get that mixture ready for when it comes in. All right, so I got myself a plate. And I just put my 1/4 cup of bacon bits or bacon, cooked bacon. And now I'm just gonna chop up a little bit of parsley. You only need about 2 tablespoons of flat leaf parsley. You could use chives as well. That would be really nice. We already have a little bit of spice from the toasted nuts with a little bit of cayenne and cumin in there. Cranberry sauce is going well. Oh my goodness, it smells so good. I can hear, don't stand too close to the cranberry sauce. Oh, he's allergic to blue cheese. You can omit it, or, you know what, maybe add some shredded cheddar in there. You know, we don't have, you know, cheddar is often in your, you know, pimento cheese. But if you can't have blue, you can add a little bit of cheddar. Or something that will give it a little tang to it. And so this, again, I just like to sprinkle. Now I know in the recipe it says first roll in bacon, then roll in parsley. Why do 2 things when you can do one altogether? So I just make sure that my parsley and my bacon are pretty well intertwined, interdispersed, and I'll set that aside. Okay, great. Well, now I'm going to put my meatballs into my cranberry sauce. Now, one thing you will not want to do is dump your meatballs into your cranberry sauce because you don't want that spattering all over the place. So here are my meatballs, which the fun thing with the parchment, I may have to just try one. Look, get a small one. And I really think like using your hands just really gets it really nice and mixed up very well. They're delicious. They're juicy. They have so much flavor. So because I use this parchment paper, I can hold both ends and I can gently kind of pour them in there without them dropping and popping out. So now I'm just going to give those a nice stir to really coat. I'm going to try and find that thyme sprig. There it is. You know, if you can't find the thyme sprig, just make sure that, you know, when you go to plate up the meal that you don't see this big giant thyme sprig. You can take it out. Sometimes they bury themselves. Oh, that smells so good. And again, this is your new meatballs in grape jelly. No more. And just this cranberry sauce alone, you know, it's perfect for our upcoming holiday. All right, so I put that aside. And I am going to start to get ready for our last dish, which it goes by so fast. But again, it's nice to have these, all of these things can be done rather quickly, which is really nice. You know, the meatballs and cranberry sauce, you can absolutely make both things ahead of time and then warm them up together. So you can make that cranberry sauce, you can make the meatballs, certainly ahead of time. And the cheese ball you can do, if you're going to make that cheese ball ahead of time, I would not roll it in the bacon and parsley until you're ready to serve it. just because you don't want that parsley or the bacon to get really kind of mushy in there. You want to keep it nice and bright and colorful. So just have that ready when you're ready to roll it. I would not use a dried parsley for this because there's nothing to have bloomed that dried parsley. You want some nice fresh parsley, and make sure it's the flat leaf, not the curly parsley. It just won't lie flat. And I personally don't find curly parsley has any flavor to it. I like to use it for garnish, and that's about it. But definitely, you know, save those until you're ready to serve. So our last thing is the red, white, and green holiday bark. Now I have toasted pepita seeds, which are the inside of a pumpkin seed. So the pumpkin seed actually has those big white, very tough shells to it. And this is the inside. They're green. They're delicious on top of salads. They're delicious on, salads. I like to snack on them too. They just have a nice crunch. I've made brittle with these before. So it's a nice alternative if you can't have pistachios, but pistachios are just as good too. And you can even get the flavored pistachios. Now I am melting down some white chocolate chips. Now I do not have a microwave down here because it recently blew. So I'm just kind of creating a little double boiler for myself. So I have a pan that's inside, I have a bowl that's sitting in my saucepan with a little bit of water, but the bowl isn't really touching the water. So I have that simmering just to help melt the chocolate. I have some dried cranberries here. Dried cherries would be great as well too. And you can always get those flavored craisins if you wanted to, if you wanted a little different color. But you know, we're trying to keep with the red, green, and white for the holidays. You can do this with, you know, I've done this before with dark chocolate and peppermint crunch. I mean, the nice thing about chocolate bark is that you can really add almost any, you can add crushed pretzels to it, you know. You can almost clean out your pantry and turn it into something. Now, for any of you who are cooking along with me, have any of you tried your meatballs? And if so, what do you think?
I see some thumbs up out there, so it looks good.
All right. Yeah, if you like a good cheese ball, this one is pretty, this one's right up there. It's a nice alternative to your regular cheese ball. But that was a good question about the blue cheese. Yeah, I find that they're either like blue cheese haters or lovers. So you can certainly substitute that with, I would say, a cheddar. Another cheese that you can easily kind of blend in. So even if it was a grated cheddar, that would be nice. Or a Gouda. I will tell you that doing this on a double boiler does take a little longer.
We do have another comment that says the sauce is great. Definitely going to be a nice change. Compared to what
great.
Yeah.
I know, you think of cranberries and all you think of is either like cranberry bread or, you know, a cranberry apple crumble, or cranberry sauce for the holidays, whether it's that jellied in a can or, as I said, the relish from the back of the bag. So it is a nice alternative. Now for this, we're gonna add a little bit of cardamom. Now cardamom, where's my cardamom is, I don't even know how to describe it. It's used a lot in Southeast Asian Indian cooking, but it has a really almost citrusy, like, you know, coriander has a little bit of a citrusy note to it. It's hard to explain, but it just has a really beautiful scent to it. All right, this is almost smooth. Now I already have my parchment paper lined baking sheet. I'm going to sprinkle a pinch of that in. This is almost completely melted. I am going to add that it's 1/8 of a teaspoon, which in my mind is just a pinch. So I'm going to put a pinch of that cardamom in there. Give that a good stir. Now, when we pour this on our plate, on our baking tray, our parchment lined baking tray, you want to make sure you reserve just a little bit so that we can drizzle some on top. All right, so take this off of the heat. I do use a side towel because it has been in steaming water. And I am just going to drizzle this. Spread that out a little bit. You don't want it to be too thick. The side towel is not cooperating. There we go. So I reserved a little bit. You have to work a little bit quickly. So I'm holding down. You want it about 1/4 of an inch thick. So a 12-inch square, if you can. You know, this is melted chocolate. It's hard to make a square. You know, while it's nice and warm. If you have an offset spatula, which is often used for cakes or icing cakes, you can certainly use that. Spread this out, and then we go ahead and we sprinkle our pepitas or your pistachios. You can use chopped almonds, pecans, but again, we're going for the green, so. But again, that's really just for the color, so you can absolutely. Okay, now I'm going to add my cranberries. There we go. Now I'm going to take the rest of what I have in here, and I'm going to drizzle it on top. You know, it's the holidays, go crazy. No one's counting calories on the holidays. Smells good. And then you just go ahead and put this in the refrigerator for about 45 minutes until it gets nice and hardened. So I'm going to put that in there, and now I'm going to take out our cheese log. All right, so I have my cheese log, I have my crumbled bacon and my parsley. I'm going to unwrap this. Now I've got to find the beginning. There we go. And then before it gets on my cutting board, I like to just unwrap it right onto the plate. And then I'll give it a nice roll. You want to make sure that it's coated with the bacon and the parsley. Sometimes you have to move it around. Add a little, stick a little where you didn't see any of the coating. Yum. And there is that. We have our bark in the refrigerator. And then, of course, we have these delicious meatballs. Let's see, I'll get a little bowl here. Oh, that are in this cranberry sauce. Nice and warm.
Do you think that would go good with ground lamb? Ground lamb, that would have to be good with cranberry sauce.
Oh,
Wouldn't
I bet it would be good with lamb.
it? Yes, I think.
You know, with a little bit of the fennel in there. I would maybe add a strip of orange zest or something in the cranberry sauce. There's nothing like roast lamb. Our family is joining another family on the day after Thanksgiving for Thanksgiving part 2, because we're doing different things on Thanksgiving Day. And she always makes, she's from Ireland, so she always makes a roast leg of lamb, and there's nothing like a good roast leg of lamb. But yeah, I think this sauce would be great with either a lamb meatball or a roast leg of lamb. That's a good question. Oh, I haven't had lamb in so long. I like them. So here are our meatballs in the cranberry sauce. We have our yummy ultimate cheese ball with bacon crumbles and spicy. I have spicy almonds. You can use the walnuts, or as I said, pecans work well too. And then in the refrigerator, we just made that white chocolate bark, the red, white, and green holiday chocolate bark that once it's cooled off, once it's been in the refrigerator for almost an hour, you should be able to break it up. And then if you want to gift it, put it in a nice little, cellophane gift bag. They're great little, handmade treats, or if you want to just store it in a Ziploc for your own snacking enjoyment, you can do that too. Now, does anyone have any questions as we wrap up? I know I probably went kind of fast, but.
What do you suggest eating with the cheese ball? Like pretzel sticks, crackers?
I would definitely get a good sturdy cracker. So a Ritz may actually be a little, well, I guess you could smear it on a Ritz cracker, but it might be a little too crumbly. So if you had like a good water cracker, of course it's great on a toasted baguette, but even a pretzel thin, if you could almost cut it and put it on there. This is pretty, before you serve it, you don't want it to be cold. You want to take it out of the fridge for about 20 minutes before you serve it, but I like it plain. I like it just on a fork, but no, I would say anything that's a little sturdier, any type, even a flatbread cracker, something that might be a little sturdier.
Thanks.
Sure. Any other questions? I hope everybody's ready for I still have to get turkey, but I hope everybody's ready for the holidays coming up. I enjoyed cooking with everybody this year. Yes, thank you so much, everybody. It's been so much fun, and I look forward to